Chapter 1 10 years later. Flash. Lightning zigzagged down from the sky. Crack. It struck 100-year-old oak tree and split it in half. A tremendous clap of thunder boomed overhead. Yikes! Shouted 10-year-old Zeus. He dropped the wooden sword he'd been practicing with. Leaping out of the way of a falling tree trunk, he took off running. He had a feeling the next bolt would be aimed at him. Why? Because he'd been struck by lightning dozens of times already in his short life. A wild wind whipped through his dark hair as he waited for safety. With his heart beating faster than a hummingbird's wings, Zeus stepped through an entrance of a cave. A new lightning bolt struck a third just outside it, barely missing his foot. Flash! Boom! The storm raged all over him as he cowered behind a boulder. This cave was his home, the only one he'd ever known, and as far back he can remember, thunderstorms had been a daily event here in Crete. He was terrified of them. He wanted to be hit by lightning after all. It tossed you to the air and rattled your brain. He ought to know. But that wasn't the scariest part. Each time he'd been struck, he heard a voice murmuring to him, "You are the one." What could it mean? Another flash of lightning sliced down the clouds, followed by rumbling thunder. Rain lashed the ground. It flattened the grasses in front of the cave and turned the dirt to mud. But then, as suddenly as it had begun, the thunderstorm moved off. The clouds lifted, the sun came out, and the earth began to dry again. Feeling braver now, Zeus struck his thumbs in his ears and wiggled his fingers. "Nah, you missed me," he taunted toward the sound of distant thunder. Nearby he heard a clunking sound of bell followed by a bleat. A goat trotted the view. "Amalthea!" He threw his arms around the goat's neck, glad to be unharmed. Moments later, a nymph slipped free from a slender willow tree and scampered over to milk the goat. When she finished, she wordlessly handed Zeus a rich, creamy cup of milk. He drank it down a single gulp, then nodded to her in thanks. Stomp, stomp, stomp. The ground beneath them began to shake. It sounded like a whole army was heading their way. The nymph's eyes went wide. "Hide!" Zeus hissed. He fled to the cave again while she leaped into the window. Merging with his trunk and his branches, she went invisible. Peeking out from behind the shoulder, Zeus was relieved to see that Amalthea was nowhere in sight. He hoped she would stay away until this new danger passed. Before long, 3 men marched into a clearing, half-giants by the look of them. They were so tall their heads were even with the top of the nymph's willow. Yet they weren't as tall as the true Titan giant. True giants stood as tall as oaks. These half-giants wore polished helmets and carried spears. 2 letters were carved in the iron helmets and the armor. KC, which stood for King Cronus. They meant their cronies, soldiers working for the Titan King. Zeus shuddered. Crony terrorized the countryside, stealing money and food from farmers and villagers. Anyone who resisted would drag off to the dungeon, or worse. He craned lower in his hiding place. One of the half-giants, the crony with the double chin, scratched his big round belly. He gazed down the mountainside. "Lots of apple orchards down there," she said. "Should be easy pickings." A black-bearded crony laughed. "Especially since we can force the farmers to do the picking for us." Zeus trembled with anger. Half of them were ready to tell those half-giants off, but the other half was too chicken. Besides, what could he do? He was only a kid. They crushed him like a bug under a humongous sandals. He heard tales of others who tried to fight and have failed. Now everyone pretty much bowed down to Crony, with beak getting stomped. "Ma!" Suddenly he heard a faint ringing of Amalthea's bell again. Oh no, she was coming back. As the clinking grew louder, the crony spotted her. "I see fancy goat meat or supper," the double-chinned one said. He drew back a spear. Zeus opened his mouth to yell, "Stop!" But before he could, the half-giant dropped his weapon. This was the picture of the cronies. Youch! Double Chin yelped, slapping the back of his neck. Meanwhile, Amalthea trotted downhill again, out of reach. The other two cronies frowned at him. "What's with you?" Blackbeard asked. "I got stung by a bee," Double Chin grunted. Zeus grinned and he watched the bee buzz around the half-drowned head and then fly off. It was Melissa. Ever since she had been mysteriously arrived at the cave with her orphan baby 10 years ago, she had kept watch over him along the nymph and Amalthea. He was glad for the companionship. Still, he did often wonder who his parents were and why they'd abandoned him. The third giant, who sported a huge tattoo of a lion on his shoulder, looked around nervously. "We should go," he said, "in case there are more bees." Zeus almost laughed aloud to think of the King Cronus' fearsome soldiers being afraid of something as small as a bee. Normally, Melissa wouldn't even hurt a fly. But cruel half-drowns did his worst, whatever he could dish out. "What's that?" Double Chin asked, staring toward the cave. Zeus shivered. He had been spotted? If so, he was doomed. But then he realized the cronies were really staring at Zeus' drinking cup. He lifted the ground in full view. Lion Tattoo was first to reach the cup. Picking it up, he sniffed it curiously. He held it upside down in the palm of one hand. "Fresh milk," he grunted. A few white drops trickled out. "Someone's here." All three cronies looked toward the entrance to the cave. Ducking his head, Zeus chucked himself small. If only he could merge into a boulder like a nymph emerged in a tree. Footsteps sounded closer, hot breath. Suddenly Zeus was plucked from his hiding place like a weed from a garden. His leg dangled helplessly in the air and his arm spun. Holding him by two fat fingers, Double Chin stared at him, eye to eye, licking his chops. Zeus squeezed his eyes shut, as if doing so might make the half-stand disappear. It didn't work, and it didn't drown out the terrible sound of Double Chin's next word either. 3, 5, 4, fun. I smell boy. Gonna eat me one.